during a period of intense lockdown and quarantine measures within the region. The aim behind Design United was to create an optimistic space for regional dialogue, connections, collaborations, and opportunities for young regional designers and design practices. A much needed network of support and peer mentorship during these uncertain times. Talented young designers and design studios working on design innovation with an approach that is relevant to our South Asian region have been invited to be a part of the platform. We also encourage design students from the region to share their work, be involved in the dialogue, and to be an active part of Design United. Design United, most of all, believes in creating a community of designers and design knowledge that is largely contextual, with focus on contributing to the environment and our community. Design United believes greatly in a spirit of collaboration and idea exchange. Welcome to Design United's 20th Design Conversation, in conversation with two talented design studios, Masons Inc. from Bengaluru, India, and Open Studio Workshop from Karachi, Pakistan. I'm Varna Shashidhar, founder principal of a regional landscape practice VSLA based in Bengaluru. I'm supported by Clayworks spaces in this endeavor. Clayworks creates flexible co-work spaces that focuses on productivity and sustainability. I'm also supported by an enthusiastic Design United team. The aim behind Design United is to create an optimistic space for regional dialogue, connections, collaborations, and opportunities for young designers and design practices. We have been supported by Clayworks, and they are introducing their new product, which is a total work from home solution, Spotch. Design United creates a much needed network of support and mentorship during these uncertain times. We would like to take this opportunity to welcome our presenting designers this evening, Rosie Paul from Masons Inc. and Shehrebanu Nooruddin from Open Studio Workshop. They will bring a lot of vibrancy to the selection of designers who have participated in the previous design conversation. Masons Inc., led by architect Rosie Paul, is a people-oriented design and construction firm specializing in sustainability, heritage conservation, and humanitarian architecture. Masons Inc. comprises of a team of like-minded individuals striving to make a difference in the construction sector. Knowledge transfer is an important aspect of Masons Inc.'s work, and they regularly conduct awareness and training programs on both sustainability and heritage. Rosie Paul, the founder of Masons Inc., has a postmaster's degree in Earthen Architecture, local building cultures, and sustainable habitat from CRA Terre, France, the UNESCO Chair for Earthen Architecture. Rosie Paul previously headed the Auroville Earth Institute. She has been involved in several projects executed using earth technologies, both locally and internationally, including in Egypt, Morocco, and France. Along with managing projects at Masons Inc., she is an earth consultant to select international nonprofit organizations. We're so happy to welcome Rosie and Masons Inc. to Design Conversation. Our second presenting designer is Shehrebanu Nooruddin of Open Studio Workshop, which has been formed by architects who, while working on large-scale projects, realize that there is immense potential in working intimately with simple, sustainable materials. Open Studio Workshop aims at creating simple, everyday objects with finesse and beauty. Their workshop is their space to experiment. Shehrebanu Nooruddin, who leads Open Door Design Workshop, is an architect who derives inspiration from the raw and natural beauty of things around her. She believes in a contextually relevant approach to design. She is supported by architect Dania Farouk, who speciality lies in conceptualizing and researching ideas, materials, and techniques. Dania lives in Australia and was a former tutor at the Indus Valley School of Art and Architecture in Karachi. Open Door Design Workshop seeks to answer questions that seem simple enough but can manifest itself into multiple iterations. Welcome, Shehrebanu Nooruddin and Open Door Studio Workshop. We will start this presentation with Rosie Paul from Masons Inc. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, Rosie, we can hear you.
Hello, Varna. It's great to be here. Let me just start off with the presentation. Can you just let me know if you can see the screen?
We can. Thanks.
All right. So thanks again for this wonderful, wonderful introduction, and thank you, Clayworks and Design United, for this opportunity. We're very excited to be presenting for this audience, and such a great idea to stay connected during these trying times, I would say. Also very happy to be presenting alongside Open Door Design Works. Very excited to listen to their presentation as well. So I'll start off quickly so we can get to the second presentation in time. So as the introduction said, we are Masons Inc. Studio. We are a firm that specializes in sustainability and heritage conservation. We are about 7 years old. This firm was co-founded by me and my business partner, Sridevi Changali. Since this is a 20-minute presentation, she is online, only I will be presenting, so we can save on some time there. But she can come on for questions asked later on. So starting off, Masons Inc. is a design and construction firm, which is focused on human-centric architecture. And that's why our name also reflects, the hands that make our designs a reality. And that's why we're called Masons Inc. Studio. Moving on to the presentation. So today, we would like to talk about architecture, an architecture that goes beyond just its architects. We chose this as the topic of the presentation because we really believe that architecture has a huge impact on everything around it, not only its environment, but also the society and the community that it is built in. And we believe that architecture, big or small, has a huge impact on all these factors. And whether this impact is positive or negative falls hugely on the shoulders of the architect. And it's important that we realize that we have this responsibility, and we take it up sensibly and sensitively. And I'd like to take you through a journey of one of our projects, which is Ramaram. It's the picture that you see on the screen. It's a farmhouse that was built on a 25-acre organic farm. And we wanted the house to reflect all the principles that the organic farm itself had. And while the process of construction, design, construction, and operation, we considered all the external aspects of the impacts that this would have on the environment, the economics, and the society around it. And through this journey, we will show you how we tried our best to bring about a positive change to this community. So this is the farmhouse. The client was an ex-IT professional who decided to go the environmental way and left his job and went into organic farming. And he was very, very keen on his farm being using only natural, um, fertilizers and natural ways in which he can grow the crops on his farm. And hence, we also wanted that to reflect in the house we built for him on this farm. So the site was, I would say, any architect's dream or any person's dream to have a house that looks into this kind of view. And we were very clear from the beginning that if we are going to build in a place like this, we should build in such a way that we interfere with the landscape the least possible, I would say. So we chose a place on the farm which had lesser foliage. We have not cut even a single tree in on this site. And as we go along, I'll tell you how we fought for this one tree that you can see in the image also, the one without any leaves. Actually, it's a seasonal tree, and the leaves come on for a particular season only. But when it does have the foliage, it is a very beautiful tree, and we're very happy that we fought for its existence. But along with a site like that also comes certain constraints as to accessibility. It was a bit cut off from any town, and we knew that getting materials onto that site would be difficult. Now, how we addressed this problem, I will come to later. In terms of planning and layout, you can see it was a very simple plan. I won't stay too much on the plan as we have a diverse set of people on this session. So the layout is simple. It imbibes strongly from the vernacular of that region. It has so this is situated in Tamil Nadu, very close to Bangalore, and it has hot summers, and monsoons are quite heavy. So even the design has answered to a passive way of handling the temperature differences, etc. So you will find courtyards and semi-open spaces that people can still enjoy the weather, whether rain or shine. Another aspect that we looked at, and we believe that is important as well in any project, is to look at the cultural fabric of of that region that we are building in. So, as I said, this place was a village area, and they had this in villages. They have the habit of meeting together at a place and deciding, discussing events of the village, taking important decisions as a community. And the client is seen as someone important in the village, and his advice and opinions are taken seriously. So they always come to his house, and we wanted to kind of incorporate this nuance into our design, such that our design enables this cultural nuance, and it does not kind of cut them off, and does not provide for this. So if you see, there are these large veranda spaces where people can meet and discuss, and such that it can fit quite a number of people, even if a large group needs to sit and make decisions here. Of course, this also plays to the passive architecture of having, a semi-open space where the summers you get the breeze, but they're cut off from the harsh sunlight, etc. This is another angle of the same. So the veranda kind of envelops the building in over two sides. So now I had earlier spoken also about the accessibility of the site, and how the materials chosen for the built structure was carefully chosen from within the site itself. We made it a point to only use materials that are found either on the site or close by. So a simple form was maintained, which was mostly a ground floor structure. The walls were mud walls. The blocks were made on site itself. The mud got from the site itself. And and even the wood that we used, not a single new tree or new wood was not used in this. It was all repurposed wood. I'd like to bring your attention to the roof, where we used the wood from an old factory, which was going to be torn down. We took that wood and we put it as the, all the structural members, the rafters, the windows, everything was taken from this wood. And actually, you will see, if you look carefully, you can still see the markings of the bolts and the nails that came on the wood. So with the local carpenter, we tried to tell him that we like that our materials tell a story, and he was trying to cover it up, and we said no, it doesn't matter, because it's, for us, it adds to the aesthetic if there is a history to it, and the material actually speaks of that. This is we have a few rocks on the on the site, and we use the local stonemason who very often does a lot of retaining walls there because of the sloped landscape in that region. We used him, and we taught him how to make a wall out of it. So it was a new experience where he had to use mortar in between these joints, and it was a very fun experience where we went back and forth, and there were compromises made. But in the end, we arrived at a good compromise, I would say, where we were happy with the aesthetic, and he was happy to know that he has the skill even to build a wall that can take loads. Later on in the presentation, you'll see the final um, result of this wall. And for us, as far as sustainability is concerned, or being sensitive and building something, less energy intensive, it also translates in the operational phase. So not only did we use natural building material for the building, but also when the building starts getting operated or used, we want to make sure that the energy is saved. So we have rainwater harvesting, we have biogas for cooking, and we also looked at solar for providing for electricity. Now, an important part that I'd like to speak in our process and our usual design approach is that for us, when we talk about resources, we're not only looking at local building resources, we're also thinking of local human resources. So it was clear for us that we wanted to use the local labor from the village. So we looked out for a mason who built in that village, a good one, whose finishes we liked. But he was building with conventional materials like concrete blocks, etc. And we trained him to use mud and stone, etc. So the picture that you see is a picture of him working on a mud plaster. And one of the success stories for us is that now he builds many more mud houses. So, you have these happy endings that you think of and you cherish when, you're having a tough time. And these are just small successes that we feel when someone who didn't know about it gets trained and then becomes advocates of that material means a lot to us. Apart from labor, we also use our sites as a place where people can come together and create that strong sense of community. So it's not only the existing community by using local people, locals from that area to build the house, it's also the architectural community where we bring in students of architecture onto site, and we kind of try to reduce the the gap that exists between what you learn in the classroom and what actually happens on site. And in turn, what we're trying to do here is, bring the mason, bring the architect, bring the student, bring the engineer, everyone on one platform, and kind of get a dialogue going so each one understands the other better. And this we do across all our projects. A very, very important part of our mission is knowledge transfer and training and skilling and upskilling. So we hold a lot of workshops on both heritage and natural building material, and we train masons, etc., to have more people fight for this cause. And we believe that this is not something that you can do on your own. We need an army, we need people, and that's what we also try to do in our mission as architects. So from all of this, I mean, the small things is what we got. What we got in this project is a building that is simple in aesthetic, very honest in its material. We don't try to hide what we're using. If there's brick, you see that it's brick. If it's wood, you see it's wood. And in areas where we did need, beams tying the building together, we see that the beam existed. Even the fall ceiling here is the same wood that I was talking about, which is from that factory, which was just sanded and resized to create that beautiful fall ceiling. We needed, because of the span of the room, we needed a beam there. We used a coconut a tree. So there is, after 100 years or so, the tree stops, giving fruit. So that those are generally cut. So we use those, and we've not even we've only removed the sap that would deteriorate. So we didn't waste the wood to make it into like a beautiful square or whatever. You see how it is. And this is that stone wall that I was talking about that took longer because we had to go back and forth, and the person did not understand. He's used to building retaining walls, beautiful ones, and it took some time to kind of skill him into doing load-bearing walls that actually transfer loads. And this is just a picture where I'd like to speak about certain imperfections that you might see in your mortar joints, or in it's not a perfect shape of an arch or whatever. It's just to bring to you that we find beauty in these imperfections. Behind, you will see on the right side, behind you will see the retaining walls that he used to do. So he already had the skill. Those are beautiful walls. And and then if you think back to the last slide where you saw the stone wall, it was just a little bit of pushing and training he needed to actually create similar masonry walls. And in the end, what we arrived at is a building that kind of blends in and doesn't stand out. And this is what we feel it should do. We feel that buildings should not stand out too much, but kind of blend in with its natural environment. And once we're here, we realize that also that if you're good to nature, nature rewards you in some way, and that really comes out when you go there and you experience the kind of energy that place has, and how the trees really kind of protect it from the harsh weather, etc. So I come to the end of my presentation. Looking forward to listening to Shehrebanu speak about how she views building construction materials and what she does with them. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rosie, for a wonderful presentation. We would now like to invite Shehrebanu from the Open Door Design Workshop, Karachi, to present the interesting work that they do. I would like to thank architect Josefa from Karachi for connecting us to Open Door Design Workshop.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rosie, for an amazing presentation. It's a tough act to follow. And hi, everybody. Thank you for having us here, giving us this platform to share our work. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay. So thank you for giving us this platform to share our work and our ideas. It's an amazing platform, and it's really great to be here. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce Open Door Design Workshop, and through the course of this discussion, share some of the choices we are trying to make which inform and direct our practice. We are very new. We just built, as a platform, the workshop is very new. We just built a simple shed about a year ago as an extension to the architecture studio. Sorry. Yeah. Which was the first step towards exploring materials and techniques at a small scale. It was our first step in trying to do some hands-on research and exploration. I would like to begin this presentation with talking about why we chose to build it. So when you navigate life in an urban context, in a densely populated city, it's very easy to focus on all the bad things because they are very, very present. There's so much pollution, there's so much traffic, there's noise, there are many ugly buildings. Some of them really need to be covered with vines. But all around us, in small but very simple ways, beauty is ever present. It's very intrinsic, it's very intuitive, but it's there. So some of these pictures are just pictures that we clicked while moving around the city, working in the city. And they just reminded us about how simple things can be so beautiful just because of their intrinsic value. This picture is of the dappled light shining onto the bright red clothes of two people in the studio. This picture is just some waste wood that has been stacked up and stored in our workshop. So by choosing to focus on these moments of beauty, we tried to build a space for ourselves where we could really enjoy all of these things. So we built this shed out of natural materials, simple bamboo, simple jute, where we could enjoy the sunlight, we could enjoy the shadows that danced around all day, we could enjoy the rustling leaves and the birds, the sound of the birds. We could enjoy the textures come alive because of the light. We could enjoy the growth of plants through time. The second choice that is very important to us as a practice is to harness the collective energy of talented people around us. And we're very lucky to have an amazing team of designers, draftsmen, and colleagues who work with us. So for this point, I'd like to sort of share a few pictures of us spending time in the shed and how that impacted us as a practice and how it led to the birth of the workshop and our explorations at the smaller scale. This picture is of the team just setting up the birds in the workshop, us having a discussion. I think this is when we first received the waste wood and we're just looking at it and trying to think about what we could do with it. This is Marzia, our Chief Financial Officer, and she seems to be looking at a very intense spreadsheet. This is a fun discussion, just sitting out in the garden. This picture is one of those moments where a lot of people come outside in the shed and are doing different things together. At the back, there's Ira, intern. Sometimes it's really nice to sort of step out of the studio, sit inside, sit in the workshop, enjoy the breeze, and bring our laptop with us and do some work. It's also a good space to sit and coordinate with contractors. In the forefront, we can see Rida, who works in the workshop with us, and our carpenter, Ghulam Nabi. They seem to be experimenting with some terrazzo. Dabir is a partner at the studio. He's on his phone at the back. This is one of the initial discussions when the shed was just built. I think we were conceptualizing at the concept stage of a project and discussing what we could possibly do with it. These pictures are just a glimpse of how this space sort of let us enjoy all of these simple pleasures that the natural environment has to offer. And slowly it started translating into the kind of work that we do. When I talk about the collective energy and harnessing it, I'd like to share a story of the first small object that we made. It was these, we wanted to give a housewarming present to one of our clients, and they had two little girls. So we decided to build these small birds out of the waste wood that came out of their site for them. And how we did it was that we cut up these pieces of wood, and every member of the studio made an iteration of their own bird. All of these birds came together as a beautiful collective, and that's a very strong symbolic representation of the way we aim to choose to work as a studio and as a workshop. Another important part about choosing to really focus on the skills and talents that everybody around us has is to keep an eye out for these objects that sometimes just happen as a byproduct of the work that we do. For example, this image is of how the carpenter chose to put the hooks of a product together to store them. And by itself, it's just such an interesting object. It led to a discussion on what kind of functional products we could make with it. It had some very interesting shadows that it cast. The texture of the wood with the black paint was another point of discussion that we picked up from. This is another piece that the carpenter just built. That's Murtaza, one of the partners at the studio, holding it. we gave him a drawing for these small, tiny terrazzo squares, and he designed and built this contraption to pour them in. And again, it was just an object which sparked a discussion in the workshop about what we could possibly do with these materials. This is made out of waste wood, again. Jumping to another important collaborative process, to us, it's really important to work with children because they have immense creative potential, and it's important to nurture their understanding of the environment and materiality from a young age so that when they grow up, they're more sensitive to the environment and to the choices that they make as adults. So these pictures are from a collaborative art installation that we did with some school children here in the city. Every child painted a stone, and then we put it together to make a tactile floor installation. It's in their school courtyard, sandwiched between sensory gardens. And it was a very interesting teaching and learning process for us as well, because it led to many new interesting discoveries and conversations. Picking up from that, there's a very interesting story about my nephews who would ask me what I do at work all day. So one day they decided to come to the workshop to see for themselves. And while they were there, they wanted to build something for themselves. So they took up some form work, poured a mix of cement in it, and made these small objects that you can see on the screen. They chose the stones, set it in themselves, and actually created two really wonderful square rectangular objects, which now sit in their house as a proud reminder of the first object they designed and built. When we're talking about how we nurture this thought process and sensitivity in children, it's important for us to make the choice to be honest and empathetic with whatever work we choose to do, with the materials that we choose to work with, and with the processes that we choose to work upon. This series of pictures is just our exploration of what we can possibly do when we look at a material. These platters are made out of waste teak wood, and they're simply cleaned and put together in a nice way. So the wood by itself is so naturally beautiful. It has different textures, different grains, different colors. And just by putting it together in a nice way and cleaning it up, one can really focus on the beauty that is naturally present in it. So that is what we try to do with our work. This image is of another product that we conceptualized with waste wood. And waste wood comes in all sorts of shapes, sizes, and thicknesses. So we try to create an object which could make the most of this quality of the wood. And this particular series is inspired by the patterns that we draw as children. What it allows us to do is use different colors, textures, and sizes, and put them together to always create a very interesting and visually pleasing composition. Similarly, when we talk about trying to explore processes, the tools that we choose to work with are very important. And in the workshop, we try to work on the tools as a part of the design process as well. So we try to make textures with leaves, and this wooden kangi that you see is also a part of an exploration where we had a brainstorming session with the carpenter in the workshop, and we talked about how we wanted to try and create these different thicknesses, line weights, and distances in a kangi plaster. So he was given a free rein to make the tools, and whenever the carpenter is given a free rein to choose wood, he always ends up using teak. So we now have this set of 3 beautiful teak wood tools, which by themselves are a beautiful object to behold with us in the workshop. Another important characteristic of the wood that we receive from construction sites is that there are many different thicknesses that the wood comes in. So we try to create objects which would really celebrate the topography that the wood coming together creates. Sorry, yeah. And the smaller pieces of wood can come together in different patterns, and these images are an exploration of the kind of patterns that you can do with small pieces. Another material that we work with is waste plastic bottles. So this image is of a discussion in the workshop where Murtaza, Dabir, and an intern, Asna, are in the middle of an intense discussion on how we can make the maximum use of the properties of the bottle. So the arc on the top of the bottle is a very strong, load-bearing arc. And we needed to create an infill material which would allow us to increase the crushing strength of the bottles. So we used waste sawdust from one of our sites, compressed it inside, and then to join it, we tried different explorations. We tried tying it with rope patterns. We tried putting it together with cement terrazzo mix, and that was a successful experiment. So this image is of the first exploration of the bottle stool, where we put together plastic bottles, compressed sawdust, and terrazzo. And all of these materials are functionally very, very important and come together to form a really aesthetically pleasing palette. One of the most important choices that we must make is to choose to enjoy the process. So working in the workshop is a lot of fun because you get to really hold these materials in your hand, understand them, experience them, and put them together in interesting ways. There's always something new to learn every day. This image is of the carpenter, Ghulam Nabi, just holding fiber reinforcement in his hand, and the kind of light that fell through it is just so beautiful. This image is of two architects from our studio enjoying a winter breakfast in the workshop. Two of our interns enjoy bonding over Instagram in the little garden. This is Rida and Ghulam Nabi having a fun conversation about how we can stack the wood together. So Ghulam Nabi loves to tell stories. He has stories about every topic under the sun, and he loves to tell them. This is Wajiha, an architect in the studio and an amazing photographer, and she's precariously balanced on these stacks of wood in quest to get the perfect picture. Seems to be having a lot of fun. This is us just having some fun with color for Independence Day. This picture is from one of my favorite memories of a photo shoot for the workshop. This is the first photo shoot of the finished products that we did, and we had a particular aesthetic in mind for what how we wanted to present them. We wanted to use the palettes that are very important to us in our work. So this photo shoot happened on a site, and you can see the mess in the background. And because we were really having fun and enjoying the process, with whatever resources that were lying around, we managed to create the kind of aesthetic that we wanted for the products. And it was a really, really fun, memorable photo shoot. This picture, again, is of Marzia and Rida. I think they seem to be discussing a spreadsheet in the garden. With this particular picture, I'd also like to sort of touch upon the fact that by having an outdoor workshop space where all of these beautiful natural elements came into focus, it started affecting the way we interact with our environment and the architecture. The floor, the walls, we started sitting down more, started standing up more, started walking around a little bit more during the workday. So that informed us as people as well as the work that we do. One of the most important points is to choose to believe that it can happen. And for this choice, there are two stories that I would just like to quickly share. The first time we decided to work with plastic bottles was when we were asked to design an installation for a 2-day event in the city, a science and environment pavilion. And we thought that we could do an installation with plastic bottles to sort of bring into focus the impact that this pollution has on us in everyday life. So this image is of, I don't know, we collected 20,000 bottles, and just seeing them all together was so epiphanic. So we tried to recreate that quality in the installation, and putting it up was a challenge. There were many challenges throughout the process, but because of Murtaza, Dania, Dabir, the whole team, especially Wajiha, sort of being convicted and believing that we could do it, we managed to pull this off. This is an image of the pavilion with the two streams showing the bottle installations. Another very challenging time for us was at the beginning of this pandemic when everything shut down. It had just been 1.5 months into actively working on the workshop, and we had half done products, half finished experiments waiting for us at the workshop, and we were stuck at home with no access to the materials, not able to work with the craftsmen, and we didn't know what to do. It was very difficult for us. So we had a Zoom discussion, and we decided to focus on trying to explore a material that had been in our minds for a long time, but we hadn't gotten down to it, which is waste paper, because again, there is a lot of availability of it. So these images are just from some of the explorations that we did during the lockdown at home with the paper, explorations in form, technique, texture, and color. We used what we learned to create the packaging for our products. We designed a compressing tool and created these boards out of waste newspaper to package our products in. This image is from one of the Zoom meetings. So most of the products that you see on our website and in our work were finished during the pandemic, and a lot of them were communicated through Zoom. So it's really important for us to choose to believe that we can get through any difficulty that comes our way. And the last and the most important point is that we choose to be sustainable. We choose to make a choice very empathetically and sensitively every time we are faced with a choice. The first couple of images are of our sites where you can see the waste construction materials. Currently, it's just the beginning of our journey, and we are focusing on using these materials which are very, very strong and ever present in our everyday life. So we're working with waste wood, with waste plastic bottles, and with waste paper. All of these series of images are of just the trash in the city. It's important to look at this trash as not just a problem, but as a resource, because there is so much of it there. So through our practice, we are trying to find ways to create beautiful objects out of this resource. And this last couple of images is of the current products that we have managed to develop. We are still at the very beginning of the journey, and we have a long, long way to go ahead. But it is for us a very, very exciting and promising start. So I just like to end with this image of one of the objects with the on site, where we picked up the source materials of it from. And thank you all very, very much for giving us this opportunity to share our work. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shehrebanu, for a beautiful presentation emphasizing on the simple, also the idea of the collective exploration and sense of collaboration. It just really seems like the small and beautiful ideas that your work incorporates, also the extremely fun-filled work process, and really looking at sustainability in small ways while reaching out and sensitizing even children. So it was just wonderful to see your work. Thank you so much. And I'd also like to thank Rosie for sharing the lovely work that they do through Masons Inc. Their approach that combines sustainability and heritage and also emphasizes the power of the collaborative. I wish both Open Door Design Workshop as well as Masons Inc. and Shehrebanu and Rosie the very best. And thank you so much for sharing your wonderful work on design conversation. We will now open this session for conversation. We would like to request the audience to please type in questions. I'm very happy to introduce and welcome our moderators for this conversation. Anashwara Mandale, an architect from RV College of Architecture, Bangalore, who is currently pursuing her master's in interior design at Pratt Institute, New York. She has a strong interest in journalism. Our second moderator for today is a final year student of architecture at the Mysore School of Architecture, Manoj Hosmane, who also has an interest in writing. He's currently exploring the global Indian identity through his architecture thesis, which is on a proposed pavilion, India Pavilion in Osaka for 2025. Welcome to both Anashwara and Manoj. With this, we would like to open our session for conversation. Audience, we welcome you to please type in your questions for the studios. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the wonderful presentations, and your work is really inspiring to all the young designers that are on this presentation. So my first question would be to Architect Rosie. You mentioned in one of your talks and emphasized in your presentation that the quest for sustainability in design does not end at the construction stage. In this light, how does this kind of sustainable building influence or enrich the life of its inhabitants? Does it encourage them to lead a more sustainable lifestyle?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you, Anashwara, for this question. I'm glad that you asked it. I'd like to just also bring out something that Shehrebanu said in her talk, where she said that sustainability is also a choice. So I think the most important thing for anybody is that we decide to make that choice, and slowly it becomes something that is human nature and not just a choice or an option that we choose later on. So I would say that the decision needs to be made first. So irrespective of if the building that you stay in is sustainable or not, I think the choice needs to be made first. And to the clients who do approach us, and or the ones that we advise, and they go ahead to say, okay, let my not only my everyday life but also what I live in be a sustainable product. That comes from after they've made that decision. But of course, when you design something with keeping everything in mind, so even when you decide to construct something that is less energy intensive, you need to also look at how is it going to perform when it starts running how does it function when how much electricity is it going to start using, how much light, artificial light will it need, and a lot of other things, how much artificial air conditioning would be required, etc. So I think that's where the architect can kind of help the client or help the person follow a more sustainable lifestyle, because you are providing something that would improve the quality of the house inside. The inner temperature would regulate humidity, etc. So yes, if you design well, and if not only in using material but also in your layouts, if you take care of the fact there's good cross ventilation, there's good natural light, and all these things are inherent in your design, then you're kind of helping the person who's made that choice. You're making it easier for that person to kind of follow um, that path, I would say.
Yes, I agree with you, and thank you for the insight. That was really helpful. Manoj, would you like to go ahead and
Yeah,
take over?
thank you for the introduction, Sakshi. So my question is to architect Rosie. Buildings, like, we have observed like how buildings worn out in time to time, and buildings constructed from natural materials and wood and all these materials, they beautifully weather, like, it's not like a normal building, like they age and it creates that impact. So what would it impact the person who inhabit the house, like, psychologically, because they are in these textures, earthy colors and all that. So how would it impact the person living there?
Thank you, Manoj. Again, I'm glad you asked this, because there's only so much you can speak in a 20-minute presentation. The rest can be added on from the questions. Um, so one thing that people often forget is how healthy are the buildings that I'm living in. That's one question that they forget to ask. I think in countries, in India at least, it's only now that people are wondering how healthy is the food I'm eating, because like, earlier it was not really a concern, it was not being spoken about. But unfortunately, it's not reached there yet for the building. So one of the things when how it influences when you use natural materials is that they're non-toxic. And you know that years from now, a scientist is not going to come and tell you that this was bad for you, like how asbestos or certain other elements that were considered as good, easy to do building materials later on came out to give you asthma problems and things like that. So that's one this thing when it comes to health. And I think that's something that we need to start thinking of, even as architects, because we are responsible for the comfort of the person living in that house. And it's really important that we think of that and we take up responsibility for the comfort of the person living in that house and the health aspects of it as well. And when it comes to how the energy is, one thing that most of our clients have told us when we've built with natural materials, especially with mud, is that they've always come back saying, I really like the energy in that space. And even people who visit, so we have our office space in Kerala, in Cochin, which is built out of mud. And we hold our workshops there. And it's again, like how Shehrebanu said, that when you create an environment which is very honest and very simple, and it's not overly complicated, it's just what it is, it kind of enables the person to be connected to nature. And you start seeing how you prefer to spend more time outside, or you prefer not switching on your air conditioning, you prefer to keep the windows open. It really is something that needs to be experienced, and it's difficult to put it in words. But I would say that it has come back. Like, everyone who comes there already says this, and people who live in mud homes say that summers don't affect me that much, because my building is still comfortable, and I don't necessarily need to even switch on the fan sometimes. And if we ensure that there's good natural lighting, then I think we're good.
Thank you, Architect Rosie. Over to Anushwara for next
Um,
question.
my next question is to Architect Shehrebanu. So I noticed that you spoke a lot about all the waste material that you use, and I believe there's also a lack of uniformity in the kind of raw material that you start with, since it's mostly waste material. So has this posed any challenges during the ideation or the execution stage of your projects? And would you like to tell us a little more about the kind of challenges that you face when you work with waste material?
Thank you so much for the question, Anashara. It's a very important question, and it's one of the first things that do come to mind when working with waste. So to answer it immediately, yes, it is. We don't know what we're going to get. We don't know what shape it's going to be, what size it's going to be in. But there are certain characteristics of the material that we can really, we try to work with to conceptualize objects that we can keep creating. I touched upon that a little bit in the presentation with the kind of very small pieces where you can use the tiniest piece of wood that you get. And we're at the very beginning of the journey. But I think one of the most interesting things about this material is that it allows you to think of permutations and combinations wherein you can really build upon the quality that the difference has to offer. So with the wood, that's one thing. With paper, yes, there is difference in the material, but ultimately the process sort of helps you really, I wouldn't like to call it mass produce it, but it does help you sort of work with it better, because the process kind of allows you to control the output a lot. So, yeah.
Yes, thank you. Over to Manoj.
Yeah. Hello, Architect Shehrebanu. So, I was going through a book by Architect Alvar Aalto, and I read this interesting thing where he tells we don't need a lot of things, but we need few good things to we as a being, we are behind this consumption of numerous things or objects. My question to you is, what's the importance of design in day-to-day things? But we have observed that you have designed these products and all that with so much care and intensity. What's the importance of design in everyday things according to you?
Thank you, Manoj. That's another wonderful question. I think I'd like to also Rosie mentioned through her presentation about how clients who live in these buildings which are designed well with good materials really sort of experience life in a different way. So I think that good design at every scale generally makes things easy, efficient, and enjoyable. So there is design in everything, and whether it's the fork that you use that has been designed, or the opening of a window, or the door handle that you hold to open the door, or the texture of the wall, all of it is designed. It's subconsciously designed or consciously designed, but there is design in it. So yeah, it needs to be simple, but it is very, very. Even the couple of first images that I showed of how those everyday people, the banana wala, really arranged the bananas, there was design in that, and there was a lot of beauty in that. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Architect Shehrebanu. I'll probably open up this question to both of you. Like, can we say that your architecture practices, like, architecture for people, like, opportunities for creating for local people, exchanging knowledge from one another, like, he might be a layman, but he has something to give you back as a knowledge. And how important is for designers to be part of the system where you go to the people and, like, have a conversation, so not being and isolating in your studio and all that. What would you like to say about that?
Rosie, would you like to start, please?
Yes, I think in my presentation also I kind of covered it a little bit, where I said that actually I think we create these walls for ourselves in all aspects, not only in architecture, in community, in whatever. We create walls everywhere. And somehow, even in the field of architecture, construction, we tend to create these walls where we say, okay, we're the architects, then there are the masons, they're in another room, and then there are structural engineers or another room, and then there are students of architecture who the architects. How often do you speak to, I mean, now I think there's a lot more opportunities where architects and students of architecture kind of interact, and forums like this really help in that. But also on site, how often is it that you break these walls and kind of just interact with everyone else, who is crazy about the same things that you are, maybe in a different way. Like a mason loves his work, loves to create those things that you're imagining, and there's so much to learn from him as well. There's so much to learn from just creating that dialogue. And we feel that it's really important to break those walls down and kind of not restrict yourselves to what the society says this is what your role is. Yes, an architect's role is to draw and design and create these lines and all of that, but it does not end. And it does not mean that an architect can't become a mason or can't learn how to build walls, because it once you break down these walls, it's just much easier to kind of build better, to understand each other, to know what their constraints are, what your constraints are, to see what would work. And eventually that's when real design happens, I think, when you're able to communicate with everybody, irrespective of where you have been put in the society. Yeah.
Thank you. I think Rosie's summed it up and answered that question perfectly. So yeah, but just adding to that, like, I just like to mention that, yes, that inherent creativity in everybody, even in children, it's a lot of fun to experience, and it enriches the process a lot.
Okay, so now we have a question from the audience. This is from an anonymous attendee. So the question is for architect Rosie Paul. She or he says, the mud architecture is less energy intensive and very effective, practical and economical. However, there's a taboo created by the usage of concrete in today's world, which puts up certain restrictions for mud to be put into practice. What do you think of this, and how do you handle this challenge? And please do share an experience if you've had a challenge in a similar way.
Thank you again for that question. So it's interesting because, yes, I mean, for everyone who is trying to do something which is a bit different from what is the conventional path, the conventional, I think Shehrebanu also would agree to this, where the conventional is people telling you cement is great, cement is the best material, cement is stronger, concrete is the best, concrete is the answer. And then you just need to take a step back and ask, why is it the best? Yes, it is a material, but like every other material, it has its pros and cons. Like every other material, it can be used only in certain cases. It is applicable. I mean, it makes more sense in certain areas. It makes more sense in certain climates, etc., etc. So the challenge, I think, for architects as well is to kind of take a step back from everything that people are telling you and just take it as one material. It's not the answer to everything. It is not the answer to the happiness to the world or anything like that. And somewhere I think it's gotten kind of misconstrued. And generally any material, if it's used badly, if it's not made well, then it's a weak material. No matter if it's natural, no matter if it's concrete, no matter if it's anything, if you don't understand how to use it, and if it's just done without the full knowledge of it, it is not a good one. It's not something that is long lasting. And I think that we'll see a lot in India as well, where, concrete slabs start leaking in 2 years time. There's dampness coming up, there's cracks showing up, and which is not would be the case if it was built well, or things like that. So it is a definite challenge. One is the love for concrete, and there has been a time where I made a very simple reference, like concrete is like a boyfriend that you should have gotten rid of very long ago, and you don't see the mistakes because you're just so in love with that material. So yeah, that's the lighter side of things. But yes, it is a challenge when you're trying to tell somebody that again, it is not the strongest. It needs to be used only in certain cases. Sometimes it really doesn't work. Technically it works very well in compression, but not in tension, and you see it being used in all cases and in all methods. So what we try to do is kind of inform the client also about this fact that yes, it's good in certain areas, but sometimes it can do bad. Especially how concrete is strong, but that also acts as its own nemesis, where it's too strong, it's too rigid, it does not kind of alter itself with the environment. For instance, mud, it's breathable, it moves, it responds to the climate around you. So when you it warms the place, the indoor temperature, when the outdoors is too hot. I mean, it cools the indoor this thing when the outdoors is too hot, and it warms it when it's too cold, and all these things, because it regulates and it breathes. Whereas concrete is very strong and it's rigid, and it behaves exactly the same no matter where you put it. So that's why your buildings are too hot in the summers now, and it's too cold in areas, and you need something else, etc. So the idea is to kind of break that mystery or the fascination around that material, and kind of tell them that, like all materials, is just one of them, and you need to see where it makes sense. And of course it makes sense using it in certain areas or in certain cases. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for that really insightful way of thinking about material. I'd like to hand over the platform to Team Design United.
Thank you so much, Shehrebanu and Rosie, for sharing your wonderful work with us. I would also like to thank our moderators, Anashwara and Manoj, for their wonderful moderation, the lovely audience, DU and Clayworks team. I'd like to wish you all for Independence Day and have a good evening. Kavindu from the Design United team will share the upcoming series of events. Thanks so much.
Hi, thank you, Architect Shehrebanu and Rosie, for your wonderful presentations today. And thanks to our moderators, Anashwara and Manoj, for an interesting and thought-provoking conversation. We'd like to extend our gratitude to Clayworks for supporting this webinar and all of our webinars. So far, Design United has successfully completed 20 installments of design conversations, and we have many more exciting speakers lined up, with designers across the spectrum joining us to share their thoughts. So do make sure you are back next Saturday at the same time. In September, we are joined by inspirational architect Brinda Somaya and a daughter architect Nandini Sampath of Somaya Kalpa Associates from Mumbai in the design practice. In the mentorship series that proceeds in progress on the 4th of September, we're joined by renowned architect Medapa of the Mindspace Architects in Bengaluru.
Design United celebrates India's 73rd Independence Day. On this day, we are proud to launch our new segment on initiatives by Design United. We are happy to share that our first DU foster pup, Taigu, who was a street dog born during COVID, will reach his new forever home tomorrow. We encourage our community to show kindness and foster these little creatures in our cities. As a part of this initiative, we'd also like to introduce a young 18-year-old girl from Bangalore named Kusuma, who lives with her mother and elderly grandparents. To support her family, she works in a manufacturing unit during the day, as well as in a household as a domestic helper, and carries the weight of earning for the family on her small shoulders. She aspires to educate herself and wants to pursue a bachelor's degree in commerce. We at DU believe in supporting such young, hardworking, and inspired individuals of our society who are ready to brave all odds to achieve their dreams. We will be raising funds for Kusma's educational fee and a computer, and we would appreciate any and all support that we can receive from our community. Do find more details on this on our Instagram page.
Do also fill in a feedback form that will pop up on your browser about today's webinar. Join us and stay inspired, and so follow us on our social media for our upcoming conversations. Until next time, thank you, stay safe and take care.